Good evening, and welcome to tonight's election forum. Before we begin, we kindly ask that spectators refrain from displaying any handheld signs or posters during the event. This debate is being live streamed by Rogers TV and recorded for future viewing. A special thank you to Theatre Orangeville for hosting us this evening, and to our partner organizations for their valuable contributions: the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, the Orangeville Food Bank, and the Greater Dufferin Home Builders Association. For more information about the candidates or to watch the recorded debate later, please visit our website at dufferinbot.ca. All candidates running the Dufferin Caledon riding were invited to participate in tonight's debate. Unfortunately, 2 candidates were unable to join us. However, we are pleased to welcome the candidates who have joined us, and we appreciate their participation. They will introduce themselves shortly, and if you want to leave, I can send you now. Just say the word. Here's how tonight's debate will unfold. Are you done? Good, because you're going to go if you don't. Yeah. Here's how tonight's debate will unfold. Each candidate drew a speaking order just moments ago. I will introduce them by name and party in the order drawn. Each candidate will then have up to 3 minutes for their opening statement. Following introductions, we will begin the question period. We have prepared 4 pre-selected questions from our organizations and partner groups. Candidates have not been given these questions in advance. We will also take additional questions from the audience. If you wish to ask a question, please line up at the microphone. There's one here and one here, and wait to be acknowledged. Responses to questions will follow the predetermined speaking order, with each candidate having 1 minute to respond. As we approach the 2-hour mark, or once all questions have been addressed, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. With that, let's begin by introducing our candidates. First, we hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Good evening, neighbours, friends, and fellow residents of Dufferin Caledon. First of all, I want to register my disappointment at the arrogance and disrespect offered by our current MPP by not showing up here to speak to you. Tonight, I stand before you not just as a candidate, but as someone who has walked these streets, coached your kids on hockey rinks, and sat at kitchen tables discussing the future of our community. For over 30 years, I've dedicated my life to serving Orangeville and Dufferin Caledon, not as a politician, but as a neighbour. And that's exactly how I'll represent you at Queen's Park, with integrity, action, and a relentless focus on what matters to you. As Orangeville's mayor from 2018 to 2022, we delivered results that put people first. We saved taxpayers $4 million annually by transitioning to the OPP, generated $32 million from the railway sale, money now available to reinvest in our community. We also brought in free transit and ultra-high-speed internet to Orangeville. We didn't just talk about fiscal responsibility, we lived it, all while keeping your taxes among the lowest in the region, 1.01% average annual increase over my 4 years as mayor. But let's be honest, today's challenges demand more than past accomplishments. Doug Ford and Sylvia Jones' government has ignored rural and small-town Ontario. Sylvia Jones' legacy can be seen in the overcrowded hallways of underfunded hospitals, the growing lineups at food banks, and the exhausted faces of healthcare workers her government has left behind. That's why I'm running with the Ontario Greens. We're the only party brave enough to say healthcare, not highways. Let's cancel the $10 billion fiscal disaster that is Highway 413 and invest that money in hospitals, mental health services, and affordable homes. Let's cut red tape, choking housing construction, and partner with municipalities, something I've done firsthand, to build communities, not sprawl. A strong opposition isn't just about saying no, it's about holding power to account while others are offering better solutions. For years, the current government has treated rural Ontario as an afterthought. But here's what effective opposition looks like in action. Scrutinizing wasteful spending to protect taxpayer dollars, proposing alternative policies prioritizing healthcare, housing, and climate action over corporate handouts, amplifying local voices through advocacy, not partisan games. The Ontario Greens don't just critique, we collaborate. As mayor, I proved that through grounded governance, delivers results. We transformed climate goals into free transit and green space protections. We supported small business without backroom deals. That's the difference between constructive opposition and empty promises. The left has gone too far left and the right has gone too far right. It's time to support a party that supports good fiscal management, listening and working for its constituents, and bringing integrity and accountability back to government. On February 27th, you have a choice. More of the same neglect from Queen's Park, or a proven leader who'll fight every day to protect what makes Dufferin Caledon special: our farms, our trails, and our community spirit.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from Chris Egleton of the New Blue Party.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Egleton, and I'm honored to be your New Blue Party candidate for Dufferin Caledon. I'd like to thank Doug, Chamber of Commerce, Rogers for having us. I stand here before you not as a candidate, but as someone who knows the struggles and aspirations of our community firsthand. As a resident of Orangeville for over 40 years, and as a former business owner in both Caledon and Orangeville, I've seen the challenges firsthand. I've seen the challenges our residents face, from the impacts of government policies on small business, the impact of our economy has had on everyday life. There's never been a time like now. We need a party that will actually look out for the people and businesses in our communities. I believe in Canadians' freedoms. Let's fight for free speech, freedom against mandates, freedom against lockdowns, freedom against censorship, something our current provincial government doesn't share with us. I believe in listening to all perspectives before acting, ensuring that our decisions reflect the needs of Dufferin Caledon. If elected, I promise to bring a new level of accountability and honesty to our representation. We need a leader who will fight for better health care, support our agriculture backbone, and tackle the housing crisis with practical, community-centered solutions. Agriculture isn't just a part of our economy, it's our heritage and our future. I will advocate for policies that support our farmers, ensuring they have the resources and respect they need to thrive. Education is also a priority. We must ensure our schools are equipped to prepare our children for the future. I am committed to transparency, to bring your voice to Queen's Park, and to ensuring that every decision benefits the people of Dufferin Caledon. Let's work together to make our province a better place for everyone, where true conservative values means protecting our way of life, our economy, and our democratic rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we'll hear from George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP Party.
Good evening, and I want all to start by thanking our tonight's sponsors, and I want to thank you, the very brave audience who came out on this very balmy night to have a very important discussion. These types of discussions are really the heart of our democracy, and I hope we have more and more of them, because when we have record low turnouts like we did in the last provincial election, our democracy suffers. A little bit about myself and why I'm running to be your next member of provincial parliament. I live in Mono with my wife Kathy, and we love spending time with our children, with our grandchildren, most of whom also live in Dufferin. Family means a lot to us, but so does supporting our community organizations and participating in all the community events here in Dufferin Caledon. And we've done that in every community where we've ever called home. Personally, my passion for outdoors and youth led me to coach girls softball for 10 years. But it was my belief in family and community that also shaped my work life. I had the privilege of working and becoming friends with two very passionate and well-respected leaders of the Federal New Democratic Party. You might remember them, Ed Broadbent and Jack Layton. And I've also worked in the steel industry as the executive director of the Canadian Steel Trade and Employment Congress. These have offered me opportunities to go to communities from one end of Canada to the other, to work with those communities to try and solve problems and issues, I should say very much like the ones we face today here in Dufferin Caledon, the different communities in Dufferin Caledon. I learned one very important thing, my family and my community and my work life. It taught me that we do so much better as a community, as a province, as a country, if we work together and we look after each other. And that's something that's been sorely missing in the last number of years, where we've seen so much division in this country and in this province and in our communities. So that's one of the reasons I'm running to be your next member of provincial parliament. Over the last 7 years, we've seen this provincial government dismantle everything that we built together: our public health care, our public schools and colleges, our senior care. It's made housing and life so unaffordable, and so many times it's needlessly threatened our precious farmland and our green belt, and they've done it over and over again. It's time to turn the page on Doug Ford and Sylvia Jones and return to a much stronger sense of community, and once again build an Ontario full of hope and opportunity for everyone. And that's the second reason I'm running. I've known Marit Stiles, our leader, for 20 years. She grew up in a farm in Newfoundland. She moved to Ontario for the promise and opportunity that Ontario used to provide, and she's never forgotten that, and she has never forgotten who she always works for. Thank you. I look forward to telling you more about myself, about Marit, and the Ontario we'd like to see. Thank you. I look forward to that.
Next up, we have Jeffrey Halsall, who is an independent candidate.
Thank you. Howdy. Good evening, Dufferin Caledon. I'm Jeffrey Halsall, and I'm running to be your next MPP, not because I want a new title, but because I've already been working for you for years. I believe in the local approach, putting the true needs of Dufferin Caledon first, not serving party politics or career politicians who only push their own agendas. I was born and raised here. This is my home. And for more than half my life, realistically my entire life, I've dedicated myself to this community. Whether through my leadership with the Knights of Columbus, supporting local charities, or helping small businesses and families thrive, I do this because this is who I am. If you ask anyone who knows me, they will tell you that that is not an exaggeration. So I'm running to continue the work that I've already been doing. I'm not chasing a title. I'm here because I care. I am the local boots-on-the-ground choice, and the local approach is needed far more now than ever. Here's the truth. Families are struggling, small businesses are drowning in red tape, and taxes are higher than ever. Promised infrastructure improvements remain just that, promises, while politicians play age-old games, promising the world, but delivering nothing. I refuse to be a part of that. As an independent, that means that I won't play party politics. The local approach is about real solutions for real people based on your real needs. I'm here to be your voice for Dufferin Caledon, not for a party agenda. I'm committed to 3 priorities. 1, supporting families and small businesses. As a small business owner myself, I know the daily struggles because I live them. I'll fight to cut taxes, slash red tape, and help small businesses grow and help families get ahead. 2, fixing our roads and infrastructure. It's time for the critical upgrades that we have been promised. 3, making government work for you. I will work with speed to make government more accountable, more transparent, and dare I say, more efficient. I don't answer to party leaders, I answer to you. So on February 27th, you have a choice. More of the same broken promises and political games, or the local approach. A candidate who always puts this community first and will continue to fight and work for you every single day. I'm Jeffrey Halsall, and I'm ready to continue fighting and working for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Good evening. I'm Michael. I'm the mayor of the town of Erin, a county councillor in Wellington County, and the Ontario Liberal Party candidate for Dufferin Caledon. My background, I'm a geoscientist, a farmer, a father. I grew up just around the corner, just south of Orton. I have an alpaca farm there with my family. I'm into farming every day. I'm into politics every day. I still do consulting in the mining industry. I still deal with groundwater every day. Our environment is really important to me. Not enough people worry about our drinking water. We talk about climate change, talk about carbon. Not enough people are talking about safe drinking water. And we need safe drinking water for all of our wells. We have a lot of rural wells here, and the first time we get some contamination in one area, it'll spread. So I'm looking for stricter rules to protect our groundwater. Road safety in Dufferin and Caledon, it's pretty horrendous, especially Highway 10 when you see how many days a year it's closed. So I would see to get some better safety implementation there, better infrastructure, divide the highway where we can, I don't know if we need a 410 all the way up here, but we need some safer roads. And every time you see something at Charleston Side Road and Highway 10, that's a brutal corner. Dump trucks will run you over, transport trucks will run you over, people will go through red lights. We need some more enforcement there as well. The social safety net, it's not working. We need to fix that. Ontario Works, there's not enough money for someone to survive on Ontario Works or ODSP. We have to increase that funding sooner rather than later. Waiting another 10 years is not going to solve the problem, it's going to make it worse. Social housing, there's money coming slowly in dribs and drabs, but affordable housing, does anyone know what affordable housing really is these days? So we have to come up with some solutions. And I think a good solution will be give the municipalities some money to build tiny homes within the community. I think that'll solve a lot of problems near term, and it should be a quick fix. We don't need a fix that's going to take 5 or 10 years. We got to work on things today. On top of that, the aggregate industry and quarry seems to be a big concern in this area. We have to make sure that enforcement is done properly, buffers are put in place, bonds are required for the producers, not just let them go in the old ways, and also make sure that the truck safety is there as well. So gravel pits are one thing, limestone quarries something else, but those dump trucks racing in and out of the quarries, they don't live in town. They're from far away, and they don't care what happens up here. So we need someone to enforce that as well. I'm looking at a future for Dufferin and Caledon that makes it safer, protects for the future. If we can add some more greenbelt, I'm all for it. Highway 413, the tunnel under the 401, Ontario Place, the Science Centre. I mean, there's so many mistakes that's gone on with the Conservative government, and it's time to fix those. And I think the Liberal Party can do that for you, but I'll be your voice to look out for the local problems here, as well as rural and Northern Ontario, to give a good fix, good chance to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, gentlemen, all for your opening remarks. So we're going to begin taking questions. I have one from one of our partners, but if you want to start lining up, that'd be great. This was my idea to go back to the live questions, so please be kind to the moderator. Our first question, so we'll start with the same speaking order. Sandy, you'll go first. You'll have 1 minute. From the food bank, how will your government ensure that people who rely on food banks have more sustainable, long-term access to resources that support their well-being rather than relying on emergency measures and not-for-profits?
Thank you, Doug. Well, first of all, we need to increase ODSP and Ontario Works. That has to be significantly increased. We don't want to have legislated poverty. We need to help those people. We also need to focus on housing affordability. That means some new housing models. I think some new ownership models, some new nonprofit housing like co-ops. We need to get the cost of housing under control. We also need to worry about mental health addiction and I think drug use. I think some of the homelessness issues that we're facing are really healthcare issues, not necessarily housing crisis issues. So the government needs to invest more in mental health and addiction resources. I also think we need to create better jobs locally, including skilled trades, which I've been a big supporter of. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton, over to you.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure can. From the food bank, how will your government ensure that people who rely on food banks have more sustainable, long-term access to resources that support their well-being rather than relying on emergency measures and not-for-profits?
So I agree we need more funding for the Ontario Works and ODSP, and we need to get the economy back. We need to lower taxes and get more money back into people's hands, especially the use of food banks is up so much right now that it's unsustainable. We need to have our economy back and get people less reliant on food banks, and for the people that need the support, we need to increase spending on the support. But for people that are using it just because of the way the economy is right now, we got to get the economy back and get people off of emergency relief.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas, over to you.
The Orangeville Food Bank is a striking example of the amount of food insecurity and housing insecurity that's facing so many more people each year and as we go on. I think in 2015 there were, if I'm not mistaken, around 380 people a month that would go visit the food bank, the Orangeville Food Bank, and in 2025 this year they're expecting 1,800 a month. That's a 5-fold increase, which is totally unacceptable. We have to deal with food insecurity and we have to deal with housing insecurity. And I think the New Democratic Party has been very clear on a number of solutions. One, and it's been mentioned before, doubling the Ontario Disability Support and the Ontario Works program. But we have to go beyond that. And our leader, Mart Stiles, had recently announced a monthly grocery rebate of $120 a month or $1,400 a year.
Thank you, George.
Okay, thank you.
Jeffrey Halsall, over to you.
And repeating the question first?
Sure can. From the food bank, how will your government ensure that people who rely on food banks have more sustainable, long-term access to resources that support their well-being rather than relying on emergency measures and not-for-profits?
Well, I would say it's really a shame how many people have to rely on the food bank. And it's a great thing, obviously, and the food bank does immense work. But it really goes back to the economy. And one example is look at the relief we had from simply getting rid of the HST over the holidays. If we got rid of the HST, in general, that would be more money back in people's pockets. I think really we have to lower taxes. We pay probably total of half of our income probably goes to taxes. And for me, I would start by cutting taxes, whether that's just starting with getting rid of the HST, cutting the provincial portion of property taxes, whatever we have to do. I believe people really are drowning in taxes, and that's a big reason that people don't have the money that they need.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael, Dehn, over to you.
I think the first thing we should have done is that $200 pre-election bribe should have gone to the food banks on a pro rata basis to the communities. The rich people in town, another $200 bottle of wine's not going to change their life, but $200 worth of food's going to make a difference in someone's stomach. I also think that, we're looking at potential tariffs. It's going to hit the greenhouse industry in Southern Ontario really hard. And it's I'm taking this from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Maybe we have to look at food stamps and support our farmers and support those who need it at the food banks as well. So the food bank buys a lot of produce. Maybe we can get the government to actually pay for that produce. And we're supporting two sectors at the same time. I've already talked about Ontario Works and ODSP, that we need more funding there. But I really think it's a bit of a, not just a local approach, but you have to do this at a much wider approach. So provincially, there has to be funding for the food banks. But also, how can we get the farmers into that chain? Even here in Dufferin, there are beef farmers who are selling beef to the food bank at a discount. I think that's a good thing, and we should continue doing that.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to start taking questions from the floor. So we're going to continue on now with our speaking order, regardless who it's directed to. So Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party will get the first crack at this question. So go ahead.
Sorry. My name is Chuck Heron, and my question is about proportional representation. It means that everybody's vote counts. It produces governments that give more balanced and stable solutions and doesn't shift policy back and forth when governments change. What will you do to support proportional representation?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of that?
What actions will you do to support?
Can you ask the question?
What will you do to support proportional representation system of voting, not first past the post? And a ranked ballot is just first past the post.
So you're talking about when parties change, that the policy changes?
Proportional representation means that it's not the one candidate who gets the most votes gets the seat. It distributes more seats among other smaller parties. Big parties don't like it because it reduces your chance of a majority government, but it produces a more mixed balance of members in the government.
I'm for that.
What will you do to support that's a big change. How will you help that to happen?
We'd have to change the way our elections are called. So I could argue that in Queen's Park, that we need to change the way our votes count. Is it like a popularity or a popular vote?
No, I don't want to take up time discussing.
We're running a timer now, so
Okay.
carry on.
It means that the total number of members of the government are chosen in a distribution that more matches the popular vote. So
Yes.
there are additional members of parliament to create representation for those smaller percentage of votes.
I like that idea. I'm not familiar with it, but I like the idea. I would like to have more votes for smaller parties and get less votes out of the three.
Thank you, Chris. Just a point of order. We're going to let each candidate answer, but you can pass if you want. Okay, so you don't have to, but you're all going to get a crack to answer Chuck's question and the question over here. Okay? So George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP, did you want to respond to that?
And proportional representation, I think, is something that the NDP has always been very strongly in favor of. Basically, every vote should count. And I think one of the reasons we get low turnouts like we got last time is people feel that their vote doesn't count. When we had the government, I think the previous government in BC, NDP government, tried it. But an important challenge, you had to convince people for it, so they had to take a vote, and unfortunately the vote was lost, right? But the effort was made it. We would support it federally when there was discussion when Justin Trudeau had talked about proportional representation in the federal election. The NDP was very strongly supportive of it, but we never got that vote. And provincially, the NDP has always been very strong proponents of proportional representation because we have to get more people involved in politics.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, did you want to respond?
Sure. I'm all for electoral reform. I've looked a little bit into the proportional system, and it definitely seems to work. I've been told myself, you shouldn't run because you're taking votes away from other candidates. And I said, well, that statement shows the problem that we have with the current electoral system. So I would absolutely work to change that.
Thank you, Michael. Sorry. Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn, did you want to respond?
I mean, I like the German system. I think that's a good proportional system. I don't know how easy that's going to be to change people's mind in Queen's Park. And, maybe we have to start having ethics exams for politicians before they're allowed to put their name on a ballot. And that might help a lot, too. We're pretty easygoing Canadians, and we haven't really... Is it appropriate to say bitched enough about this topic? And it's not a cutting every day. We've got other problems right now that are usually at the front of your mind. Gas tax, utility costs, food costs. That this is always at the back of your mind, but it's not at the front. And I think unless there's a grassroots movement that people like yourself get out there and be more vocal about it, I don't think the politicians are really going to listen to it because they've got other things that are at the front of mind. But it's time to do some change, and you see that a number of candidates up here. I think you see there's a lot of choice out there, and to have a minority of blue votes run the government, it's just not right.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario, did you want to respond?
I do. Many jurisdictions around the world are using this proportional representation, and I agree with electoral reform. I think the only way to do it is to put the question on the ballot. Let the people of Ontario vote on it, and because we can see what happened with the federal Liberal Party. They flip-flopped on it. It's a shame because Mr. Trudeau had gone through with his promise. I think that would have started the domino. But But I think really, if we put it on the ballot, not obviously it can't be on this provincial election, but maybe on the next provincial election, that way people will become more knowledgeable about it. They will understand it and they will vote accordingly. And I think then the government can accept the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. We'll take another one over here, and the first person that'll have a chance to respond will be George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you. My name is Peter Bangarth. I live in Orangeville, and I want to preface my question by thanking the five of you for being here. I respect you deeply for showing up and also for doing your civic duty by standing for election. I came with a long list of questions, but unfortunately, most of them were for the elephant in the room, which is in fact the person who is not in the room. And then the fellow in front of me asked the next one I had, so I've come up with one now, and that is, that elephant in the room is that this riding has been conservative since time immemorial. And yet here you are running for office. Not to be a downer, but what makes you think you have a chance?
That's a good question. There you go.
Go ahead. That's a very good question, because I think, as Jeffrey said, if you fight for what you believe in, you're doing a very important job. I've been with the NDP almost 60 years now. It's never been an easy battle for us. I worked in a by-election in Outremont when, I don't know if you remember, Tom Mulcair was a leader, in a riding that nobody ever thought the NDP would win, and we won. It took hard work, it took talking to people, but you can never give up. And I think the important thing is that you don't look at obstacles, you look at what needs to get done. And what's happening in Ontario right now, and the fact that Sylvia Jones is not here is such an important point. If people, it's not 30% or 40% that voted last time, if we get 100% people voting and vote against her in favor of any one of us, we win.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, did you want to respond to that one?
Sure. If you would all just vote for me and tell all your friends and family, just vote for me, then there you go. But it's not about simply winning this election. For me, again, it's the local approach. I want to change hearts and minds one person at a time, and that's really what it is. And if we can do that, if we can talk to people that we know, and like George said about getting more people out to vote, send them the link from this live stream and tell them, watch this. You haven't voted in 100 years. Watch this. Go vote. And it's going to be a slow battle, but we'll get through it. Thank you all for coming, because this is the grassroots.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party, did you want to answer that question?
And Peter, thank you for coming out on a snow day and asking such an awkward question. So I've been a Liberal for just about a month now. I've been a centrist all my life. I've had no party affiliation. But I think Bonnie Crombie can be an agent for change. I am a troubleshooter, a fixer. I get bored if I don't have a problem to fix. I don't like sitting there and doing nothing. And there's probably a lot of people in this room have their hobbies. Mine is fixing problems. I think I can do that, and I think I've got a good track record in industry in the town of Erin. I mean, that wastewater treatment plant, nobody wanted it. I don't want it, but we had to make it work, and we're making it work. We got funding for it from the developers. If we can do that, Queen's Park, have more people who are not the taxpayers paying for things. Why are we paying for a $4 billion spot at Ontario Place? We got to get some change in there because Doug's not going to do it. Voting blue again's not going to do it, and I think Bonnie's got the best chance of making that change. So I'm supporting Bonnie, and I hope you support it.
Thank you, Michael. You know, when I got here tonight, I introduced myself to all the candidates, and I introduced myself to Sandy, trying to pretend like I'd never met him before. And I know Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario wants to answer this question, don't you, Sandy?
All right, thank you. Thank you for the question. So, lots of discontent in this riding. Highway 413, the mega quarries, road safety issues throughout the riding, failure to invest in municipal infrastructure, and Sylvia Jones is missing in action. So what we need here, we need a local champion to work with the local municipal leaders and community groups and to make a difference here. And unfortunately, our current member of parliament, as I said, has been missing in action. I was the mayor of this town for 4 years. Not once in 4 years did she call me to say, let's get together and have a coffee, talk about things. What can I do to help you? Not once in 4 years. This is the kind of behavior that we don't expect in our leaders and our elected officials. If any of you were in her position, I'm sure you'd be reaching out to your local municipal officials to get together a couple times a year, have a cup of coffee. Thank you.
Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party, did you want to answer that question?
So I am a conservative. I've voted conservative all my life. I agree that Doug Ford's party is, well, I don't think they're conservative anymore. I think they've fallen under the Trudeau trap. And that's why I decided to run with New Blues, to bring real conservatives back and real conservative values back to Dufferin Caledon and to Ontario if enough of us get elected. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So here's what we're gonna do, because I'm making it up as I go along. We're gonna take one more from over here, and then I'm gonna answer another one of my partner questions, because if we didn't have these partner questions, we wouldn't be here, because the Board of Trade takes a big hit financially on these things. So go ahead. And first up will be Jeffrey Halsall, the independent candidate. Fire away.
Okay, so my name is Andrew Allo.
Can you fix Michael's microphone? It's very difficult to hear him in the audience clearly. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Andrew Allo. My question, and I'm going to change tacts. Name the one politician you admire most and why.
Jeffrey?
I really would say that I can't name one because I'm sick of politicians, honestly, and that's why I'm running as an independent. I'm sick of politicians. I'm sick of party politics. I can't name one because there isn't one that I admire. It's the truth.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
And hopefully you can hear me now a little better. Thank you. I mean, Winston Churchill's sort of one of these politicians that I think people should strive to be. You know, he's not perfect, but he led Europe through a really bad time. I don't think we'd see a united Europe the way it is today if it wasn't for what Winston Churchill did in the UK and his leadership with Canada and the US. So he would probably be the figurehead. You know, I'm not going to start smoking cigars and drinking rye or whatever he drinks, but I mean, he had some great leadership qualities. People respected him, people feared him, people trusted him. So I think you need a little bit of, you need more respect. And right now, I don't know if we really respect a lot of our leaders, but I think he demanded that and earned that respect. So I'd pick with Winston Churchill.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
It's a difficult question right now because, we've lost a generation of voters. I think the 35 and under crowd has become disconnected with politics because of integrity issues, and it is difficult to look out in the political world right now. So I'm going to go back in time. Probably going to give George a little push here, but remember 20 years ago there was a discussion about the top Canadian, and the top Canadian at that time was selected was Tommy Douglas, and he's the gentleman in history who was responsible for starting universal health care in Saskatchewan, and then it caught on across the country. So he's a very impactful person in Canada, and helped to create the universal health care system. So I'll hats off to Tommy Douglas.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton, over to you.
Can you just repeat that one more time, please?
Who do you admire most as a politician and why?
I'm not going to say admire as much as I'm hoping to be able to admire Pierre Poilievre and what he's... My cheerleaders are here. I just think we need to bring common sense and normalcy back to Canada.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas.
Sandy stole my choice, but that's okay, Sandy, because he is probably the best Canadian if we ever had to honor someone. But I'll go with FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because very much like Tommy Douglas, he came out of a period where it was dog eat dog. It was during the Depression. It was look out for yourself, right? Doesn't matter what happens to the other person, right? And he had the courage to say, no, we should be working together as a community, as a country, to be able to look after each other, to work together, and build ourselves together. Now, he didn't do one thing. He didn't create that public health care system that Tommy Douglas did. And that's why Tommy Douglas is still my favorite hero. And I know hopefully we'll talk about health care. That's the crisis we face here, too. Health care is symptomatic of a society that's looking at divisions. Instead of saying we built this province in this country, working together. And we should go back to doing that. And I think just looking at private answers and making more profit all the time is not necessarily the answer.
Tommy was my favorite.
I just want to remind all the candidates you have 1 minute to respond, and we're all seeing the same screen right here. We might have to give you the nickname of a former Orangeville councillor that was famous for going over time, and he'd shout above the microphone, but he'll remain nameless for now. But if you know who I am, who he is, you're chuckling inside. That's not where I went to get my haircut tonight. So this question from the Home Builders Association. The tri-counties of Dufferin, Wellington, and Grey are looking to add green development standards, which makes it difficult to build homes in multiple areas, adds more red tape, and ultimately increases the price charged to new home buyers. It is undeniable that we are in a housing crisis. So why are we making it more expensive to build than necessary? Would your party support making voluntary provincial green development standards versus having each municipality with their own set of rules? So the first to get a chance to answer that one is Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Thank you very much, and I'm actually involved on the planning committee at Wellington County on this program. The developers are just not doing it on their own, or if they are, they're doing it so sparsely. So green development is supposed to be more environmentally friendly, reduce energy costs. If you want a greener environment, you have to do this. It's not a choice. And to say, well, the cost is a bigger cost, the cost you pass on to your customers. There will have to be different levels of housing. It's not going to all be green, but you're going to have a certain percentage of it, or we're going to have an environmental crisis or continue to have one. The amount of waste from construction sites going into landfills right now, it's insane how much is coming. It's more than the garbage we produce from residences. So we do need some green standards. I don't know if the party would support it, but I would definitely support some green building standards.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario. Did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I would. Well, since we're at the Green Party, we definitely support green development standards. I went to a housing summit at Hockley Resort a couple months ago. It was very interesting. It was attended by some MPPs, local politicians, and a lot of industry people. It was kind of depressing, actually. Housing starts are at an all-time low. And what we found in there was that the price of new homes, 35% of the price of new homes is government fees and taxes. So this is development charges, connection fees, HST, building permit fees. So the government's talking out of both sides of its mouth at the same time, saying we want affordable housing, but we want our 35% of your new home price. That's where the problem is. That's what we have to focus on. We have to reduce government greed, maybe take HST altogether off of new home sales. That would probably be a good start. But this 10% cost of green development is, I think, acceptable.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party. Did you want to take a crack at that one?
Sure. I 100% agree that we have to remove the red tape and the bureaucracy out of getting homes built. Whatever we need to do to make more homes now and not postpone them for 10 years, we have to look at every option we have, and including reducing the demand of houses. I think the federal government has overwhelmed us with immigration, that it's created a housing crisis on us for supply and demand. So I think we need to look at maybe stopping the immigration right now until the supply gets back up to where it's sustainable again.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP. Did you want to answer this one?
Development fees mean different things to different people. I think taking development fees out of municipalities' controls would be very dangerous, because each municipality knows what that development fee means. It means your sewage. It means different infrastructure you have to do, because developers a lot of times don't do that. They build on top of those things, right? So that is an issue that we should be discussing very, very carefully. Housing developers have done a lot, and they have a right to make whatever profits they make, but we also need an alternative. And the New Homes Ontario, proposed by the NDP, basically says, where home developers do not build affordable housing, we have other options, like our communities, like co-ops, like public homes, where funding could take place to them to complement what developers are doing. We used to do that back in the 1990s. Ontario stopped that. And it's basically put us totally in the hands of developers.
Thank you, George.
And that's wrong.
Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate. Did you want to answer that one?
Could you repeat the question first, please?
Could I paraphrase it? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Would you support forced green development standards or make them voluntary for municipalities?
I would say, like George mentioned about the municipalities know what is best. My slogan is the local approach, so, we got to think local. We're absolutely in a housing crisis, and it's absolutely insane, the price of houses. And yes, we need to build more affordable housing, but we also need to figure out how we can get housing prices down in general, how we can get rent down in general, and I would work to find those answers.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So I'll take a question from this mic now. And the first person to answer this one will be Sandy Brown.
I've never done it. Is it working?
Yep.
So I'm very nervous. So I've never done anything like this before.
You're among friends.
But I'm pushed to this limit. I guess that's what I'm here to say. I'm a mother advocate and a caregiver, and I advocate for my adult son in Orangeville. And my question was directly to Minister Ford, but he's not here. And so I was naive. I didn't realize this wasn't an all-candidates meeting. But nonetheless, I like to raise the question, and maybe somebody could answer it for me. My question to him was, can we expect an announcement for $1 billion, because he says $1 billion a lot, to help fund the municipalities for their tireless efforts to find supportive care for our vulnerable people? And so that's the question. It's one thing to fund mental health and addictions. I believe 400 places for addictions. But what about the life skills to support? That support is required to help this demographic of people. Things like laundry, meal planning, cooking, cleaning, medical care. They need supportive living. They need, to get them out. So I'm saying let's reduce the load on the hospital and justice systems, reduce ER visits and police interventions. Over the last 14 years, I've experienced many caring and knowledgeable people doing their best with nothing. They take the frustration of thousands of us burnt-out caregivers with grace and compassion. I would advocate here for fair wage, but that's another issue.
Is there a question coming?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you encourage the provinces? It's one thing to ask the mayors to increase taxes to support these things, but we need more. It's a bigger demographic. Would you encourage the provinces to give the municipalities more funding for supportive living?
Yes. Of course. I know it's a struggle, and here in Dufferin County, social services are handled by Dufferin County. I know recently there's been some money for some municipal infrastructure. Everybody around us got some, and this particular riding didn't get it. So we need somebody who's going to fight locally to bring some additional funding for supportive housing. There's been some projects here in Orangeville that have the former motel on First Street there has been built by SHIP. It's offering supportive housing, but definitely there's hundreds of people on a waiting list looking for this type of housing, and we definitely need to build more of it. So I would absolutely advocate for more funding from the province.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party, did you want to respond?
Yes. I absolutely would push for funding for that. So for work, I deal with a lot of restaurants and stuff, but I also deal with a lot of the group homes like Community Living, RENA, and some of the other ones. And I think they're great, and I would definitely support funding for those and for similar.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP Party, did you want to respond?
Yes, please. No, thank you for that question. That's so important. Municipalities are living most of the services that are critical to us. Yet over the years, and it hasn't been only the last 7 years of Doug Forst's government, it's been the previous Liberal governments as well, have just downloaded and downloaded and downloaded and downloaded. And the problem is we got mayors, like our mayor, I live in Mono, John Creelman, who are put in impossible positions where they have to raise taxes and take all the blame for it. But Peel has put out this cut-in-half pledge, which calls for a renegotiation of the federal-provincial arrangement, the provincial-municipal arrangement, and we're fully in favor. We signed that pledge. And our leader, Marcel, is committed that we have to reverse almost 25, 30 years of continued downloading, and she's pledged to start looking back to rebalancing that so municipalities can be allowed to serve those services which they know best are needed in the community.
Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, did you want to respond to that question?
I would say I would certainly look for solutions to these problems. I hear about those kinds of things all the time. My grandparents are on a waiting list for long-term care. I have friends who deal with mental illness, the works of all that kind of stuff. And I would say that, the government can find the answers, can figure it out. But it just seems like we need to build more awareness about these issues. And a big thing that I would do is I would host regular town halls and find out what we can do for these issues, and then bring that to Queen's Park and advocate for it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party, did you want to respond?
Sure. Look, so social services is a provincial responsibility, and really outside of the long-term care homes that are run by the counties or the municipalities, there really isn't a lot of taxpayer dollars that are going directly into social services. But that means they're even more heavily underfunded. When you see the town of Orangeville is donating money to the food bank, that's them being really gracious and helping out at a really needy cause. But that's not their primary duty, is to provide that. So the government has dropped the ball on social services, on healthcare, and it's got to pick it up again. And we've got to figure out who's the right person who's going to drive that forward, because you haven't seen it with Sylvia Jones. You haven't seen it with Doug Ford. It's time for a change to come up with a new leader who can do that. And I think we've had some commitments now from Bonnie Crombie. I mean, my math doesn't work that well, but I'm not that optimistic that everyone's going to have a doctor in 4 years, but I think it's a really nice goal. But let's try, and let's get moving instead of waiting 10 years to get there.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take 3 questions from this side, then I'm going to ask a partner question. I'm doing this proportionally, no pun intended. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Larissa Hayward. I live in rural Mono. The gentleman from the NDP actually answered my question, but I would appreciate hearing from the other gentleman. The structure of municipalities really is a 19th century leftover something or other. So much is being downloaded onto municipalities. We talk about they need extra funding, they need this, they need that, which is brilliant, but how do you all feel about actually starting from what is it that we want municipalities to do, bearing in mind that they are probably best positioned on many different files, and then go back to how we're going to fund that?
So Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party, you're up first.
I think we should, things that are municipality driven, I believe should stay with municipalities. Some of the stuff the province can take back, but I think we need to talk to all the municipalities and find out exactly what their needs are and where they need it, and then start fighting for them provincially and federally if we need to go up higher.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP, did you want to respond?
Yes, please. Again, Teresa, that's I think a critical question, because you're going to get sick and tired of me talking about community, right? It is the communities, which are municipalities, that know best. So I don't think the answer is, as Sandy mentioned, an MPP that would fight for municipalities to get more funding. I don't think the answer is each MPP fighting for their municipalities. The answer is completely reversing that trend that has taken place over the last 20, 30 years. Talking about the 19th century. You're right, it started before this century. And it was the Conservatives these 7 years who have been terrible, but also the Liberals before them who said, yeah, it's easy. We won't raise taxes because we're going to make you raise taxes, right? And my heart goes out to municipal politicians and like the 2 of them we've got here, because you're put in really terrible situations. So the answer is renegotiating, and Marit Stiles said, we will renegotiate.
George, I'm going to ask you really hard to try to keep it to the minute, because when you go over, all these guys see it, and then they all start looking at me waving and stuff. And I'm trying to let you finish a thought, but I know. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, did you want to respond?
Sure. I'm trying to remember the full question, but, you know, my slogan is the local approach. You know, we have to figure out what should be the responsibility of municipalities, truly, and what should be, you know, we have a 3-tier system of government, and we need to make sure that each tier is doing what they're supposed to do. And I'm certainly in favor of refiguring out what each tier should be responsible for.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Thank you. Well, and back in 1998, the farm tax credit was pulled from the municipalities. So we used to get 100% of the taxes, and the province would pay 75% back to the municipalities. That hasn't been in place since 1998. So we lost that whole chunk, and that really only affects rural and northern municipalities. So we're subsidizing the cities for their food, for their taxes, by not getting that money back from the province. Infrastructure funding right now is a lottery for municipalities. You make an application for the grant and you just hope that you get one. Fortunately, I got a $29 million one 2 weeks ago for my municipality, but it's not sustainable, it's not reliable, and how do you plan your budgets? So we need a reliable, sustainable funding mechanism for municipalities for that. Social services and healthcare, those are provincial responsibilities, they should own up to it. And the other weird download that came is highways are a mishmash. Highway 124 is a county road someplace, a municipal road someplace else, a provincial highway. Same with Highway 10. It's a mishmash, and we've got to get that back so the province takes the responsibility for those roads.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Well, generally speaking, I think government is too big. I think all levels of government need to look at efficiencies. We've got some new technologies out there. I think there's a lot of consultation that goes on, and some of those consultant dollars just aren't used efficiently. So, for instance, last night in the debate, the leadership debate, Bonnie Crombie said she was going to start up a new ministry to look after affordable housing. Well, we don't need any more government. We don't need any more ministries. What we need to do is get at it. We need to get some funding. We need to get some low-cost loans out there and get this housing problem starting to roll. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next question over here, we'll start with George Nikitas from the NDP party.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Wilson. I want to talk about the 3 basic things that everybody in this room needs, which is clean air, a healthy supply of drinking water, and quality food. And quality food comes from our farmland. As you probably know, we're losing over 300 acres of farmland in Ontario every single day, and it doesn't seem to be improving at all. In fact, it's gotten worse over the last few years. In Dufferin Caledon, all 3 of these basic needs are being threatened by one particular thing, which is out of control aggregate mining. We already have a application for an aggregate mine, a quarry, and 2 pit extensions in Caledon. And 2 weeks ago, an application went in for a quarry license in Melanchthon. Despite the fact that the Auditor General's report that came out a few months ago confirmed what we've known for a long time, which is there's already an oversupply of aggregate in this province. In fact...
Could you ask the question, please?
Yep. The question is, would you and your party support a moratorium on granting new license applications until we figure this out and save our farmland?
Go ahead, George.
And I'll take the mic.
Yeah, thank you.
Deborah, thank you for the question. We've already answered you via email. Absolutely. I mean, Doug Ford's is a holus bolus, yes, sign, do this, do that, where I'm sure a lot of people that are benefiting from it, a few people are benefiting from it. We have a huge oversupply, as you say, and there's no need for new quarries. There is a need for a process that determines how we get aggregates that has environmental reviews, community involvement, and very important, I think we added that in our response to you, recycling of our aggregates, which we do nothing of, right, which would reduce our needs for aggregates overall, right? So I think the answer is a definite yes, and we are committed to it, and we've been actually fighting for it in the legislature the last number of years, and each time we get turned down by the other parties. So I think that's an important question. Thank you for it.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
I would say yes, I'd be in favor of stopping that until we get it figured out.
Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Yeah, I would support a moratorium. I think enforcement that's currently out there too has to be actually enforced, not left to go. But I might question, I don't think aggregates are taking up as much land as new commercial zoning, new residential zoning. If you look at what's happened down in St. Thomas just for that lithium battery plant, I mean, how many acres and millions of square feet is that taking up? If you look around, there's factories shut down, even here in town. They're redeveloping them. Why are we always going out to something new? Well, it's cheaper to buy 100 acres in the country and convert it to something else. Why do you want to pay $10 million in town when you can pay $1 million in Amaranth or in East Garifraxa? It's all economics, and the developers are pushing it. It's the same with aggregates. I mean, you want to be close to your market, which is the GTA, but there are options. You could bring it in by boat to Toronto or Hamilton. You don't have to do everything on trucking routes. So a moratorium is good, but I also think we've got to crack down on development in rural areas as well.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
I would definitely support a moratorium. I know I met with Deputy Mayor and Councillor Langton a few days ago. They were very concerned about that expansion of the strata pit up there. They want to go below the water table, and this is a problem, obviously. Contamination of the water table is a big issue. I think, Forks to the credit, we've got a blasting pit being planned for there. A lot of people are up in arms in that part of Caledon over this. And the Auditor General, as you said, I think it's over 30 years worth of supply with the current licensing that we have for gravel. So why are we adding more right now? I think we should have a moratorium. Thank you.
Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party.
Yes, I would absolutely support a moratorium until we get things figured out. And I'm also not, I want to protect our agricultural land too. I don't want the government to be able to just take land and give it to, well, the trucking problem that we have in Amaranth starting, but in Bolton, we need to stop that. We need to get them out of our cities. So yeah, I'm in agreement.
Thank you, Chris. The next question will start with Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
Good evening. Thank you all for sitting here tonight. My name is Jennifer Cruson, and I am a mother of a daughter who is on the autistic spectrum. And Autism Ontario states that there are over 70,000 children who will be waiting 4 years to receive their funding, which has drastically increased as under the previous Liberal government, funding was received within 8 weeks of an autism diagnosis. If elected, what initiatives would you take to help reduce the wait times and allow children access to the resources they need faster in order to thrive?
Thank you. It's a great question. You know, I can't promise I have all the answers, if any answers, but I'm sick and tired of hearing about everybody that has to wait so long for funding, whether it's for this or for anything. You know, if there's a process in place, you know, let's work with this process. Let's streamline it. Let's figure out how we can cut the red tape that is getting in the way of getting people the funding that they need for this issue and for whatever it may be.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next, we'll hear from Michael Dehn from the Liberal Party of Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, this is a healthcare concern as well, same as doctors. And psychologists, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, social workers, special ed teachers, early childhood educators, and recreational therapists. You've got to get the team. You've got to make it available and affordable for communities, whether the government pays for it or drops it to a point like their $10 daycare pledge that I'm not sure anyone's really seeing. But we've got to get the system there, and we've got to make it accessible. If you go to Toronto right now, you can get all these services if you've got $100,000 a year to spend on it. How do you get it in a rural community? You've got a little pods here and there where you get the right service, but then there's a waiting list to get in. So we have to make it, it's just like getting more doctors. We need those services, those skills into the community. I don't know what the easy fix in is, but I know what we need. I just don't quite know how we're going to get there, but funding is going to be the first part of that.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you for the question. The Green Party of Ontario has addressed this in our platform. We believe we need to build the capacity of autism providers and increase funding to the OAP to bring families into the program as rapidly as possible. We need to tie OAP funding to inflation and registration increases each year. We need to establish an ultimate wait time benchmark for the diagnosis and access to core services once registered in the program. We need to work with the federal government and other provinces in finalizing a national autism strategy to develop standards and a funding model to provide supports and services for autistic people of all ages. And we also need to strengthen the collaboration between the Ministries of Education, Health, Children, and Community and Social Services Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. You had a little bit of time left. Do you want to do a mic check? Everything okay there?
Test.
Okay, good. Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party. Did you want to respond?
So I remember when that happened, and I have a cousin who's autistic, and it hit them too. I don't support it. I would support looking at the funding that it's going towards it and reducing the wait times. I'm not sure how that would be done from sitting here, but I would definitely look into it and vote for changing the system that's in place right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you. I think this is the saddest story of broken promises that we've seen from the Ford government, because they promised, I remember, when they got elected, they promised they would fix it, like they said they were going to fix healthcare. And after 7 years, we still have 10,000 funding for only 10,000 of 70,000 autistic children. I know Marit, I know Monique Taylor, our MPP, and have been working very closely with the coalition on repeated times. Especially when I think a child at a Barrie school was sent home because they couldn't provide him services. So there are two answers, and we've been fighting for it.
There are so many stories.
So many like that.
My child has been removed from a school in Orangeville because they could not handle her.
You're right, and there are two answers to that. It's not red tape. It's we got to get that funding. And we got to do it.
We don't have the resources.
I beg your pardon?
The resources aren't there.
Absolutely. But then we also have to start funding our public school system properly.
Thank you,
as well.
George.
And those are...
Thank you for your question. We're going to go to another partner question, and then we're going to go here, and then we're going to go back over there. Okay? So this is from the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, and Bill, I'm going to be real careful and make sure I get this right. What will you or your party do to protect Ontario's farmland from urban sprawl and non-agricultural development and ensure land use planning policies that will balance growth with the need to preserve farmland? And the person with the first opportunity to answer that will be Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'm probably tight to this. We have the Greenbelt added in the town of Erin, and I would continue to add to the Greenbelt, which protects land from severances. You cannot do a lot of development, but you can still do farming. The other thing I would look at is prime ag is hard to develop. Secondary ag is pretty easy to develop. Maybe it's time we re-look at the picture. Secondary ag might be secondary ag in Kenora, but when you're 100 or 200 kilometers from downtown Toronto, secondary ag's pretty productive. And maybe we have to start protecting that just like it is primary ag. So I think those are the first two things I do. Add to the greenbelt. Secondary ag becomes primary. You can't sever it. You can't develop it. It has to stay farmland. And then we keep going on with the when you sever a property or take the farmhouse out, 99% of that land's got to stay farmland. That little house is the only bit you get to develop on. If we keep going that way, we should be okay, but the government is pushing development in rural areas, and I don't see that as being something we can do, so we got to stop it soon.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
The Green Party of Ontario wants to create an Ontario food belt to permanently protect prime farmland from being lost to non-agricultural uses such as urban sprawl, highways, and gravel mining. We heard earlier 300 acres per day of agricultural land is being taken up and destroyed for other uses. Only 5% of Ontario is prime agricultural land. So we need to have our developments happening on the other 95%, and we need to protect prime agriculture. I think the isolationism that's going on in the United States, we're going to have to grow our own food here. We're going to have to start putting up other things, greenhouses and such, to combat what is coming, a cutoff of relations with some countries. So I think we need to protect our farmland and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party. Did you like to respond? Would you like to respond to that?
So again, I'm all for farmland. I think we should protect our agricultural, and I think we should look for development. I think we should look at government-owned land that's not being used or used inefficiently, and maybe start allowing development on the governmental side of it, and leave the farms alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP.
So protecting our farmland, I think, is critical, but there are two threats. One is development, but the other one is congestion as well. And building highways, like the 413, when you have alternatives, like making the 407, which is empty, toll-free, is not the way to go. Not funding public transit municipalities 50-50, like my leader promised yesterday, or today, actually, to include urban public transit rather than building new highways. So those are real alternatives. In terms of development, we have to explore many other alternatives than basically destroying farmlands and greenbelt. Legalizing fourplexes, looking at other measures such as these that have been in demand, people have been demanding them, can minimize that threat as well. So stopping the transport threat and stopping the development threat can
George.
protect.
Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'm of course in favor of protecting our farmlands. My father grew up on a farm. You know, I grew up in not on a farm, but you know, learning about farming and about agriculture, and you know, we had a beautiful vegetable garden in the backyard, and we still go back to the family farm every year. And I'm all in favor of figuring out how we can protect the farmland, and as well as figuring out what we can do to solve the development crisis that we are going into, in the housing crisis that we're in. And obviously the answer is not building on farmland. We need to farm that land.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, we're going to go to a question right down here. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario, you'll get the first chance to respond.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of oomph to be here and to take the questions, and perhaps the hits sometimes as well. So thank you for doing this. My name is Heather Hayes. I have the privilege of being the Executive Director of the Orangeville Food Bank. 25% of the people accessing the food bank right now indicate that employment is their primary source of income. Less than 30% of the people who contribute to employment insurance in Ontario can access it. With Ontario's cost of living, more people with employment are turning to food banks because they still can't make ends meet. How does your party plan to improve the quality of employment and worker protections in Ontario?
Well, I know we have to create more jobs. We need to create more good jobs. I know locally we've been supporting skilled trades and introducing youth to skilled trades here. I think that's really the crux of the issue. We have to get people into good paying jobs. We have to convince our young people that the career path into skilled trades is a good one. As far as how the Green Party is going to address all of those issues, I don't have that answer for you right now, Heather, but I do know that employment and creating good paying jobs through boosting the economy, the green economy, and also getting our kids involved in skilled trades is going to be a big help in helping alleviate this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party.
So creating jobs we need to do that. Skilled trades, I'm for. I've had a renovation company in Orangeville until a couple years ago for 10 years. So I'm obviously all for skilled trades. I think we need to offer small businesses in town tax breaks and tax incentives. And with the skilled trade schools, we need to offer businesses an apprenticeship program and give them breaks on maybe labor costs or whatever for hiring an apprentice. And we got to get the economy fixed so that people have their own money again, lower taxes on Canadians or Ontarians. We need to get the economy back. We need to get people's life back. It's just too hard for everybody right now.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas.
That's a very interesting, that's a very interesting question. Thank you. I think it's at the root of what's been happening, again, not only the last 7 years, but the last number of years. Our economy, despite what Doug Ford keeps telling us, I was watching the debate yesterday, was all these billion this and thousand this and thousand. Our manufacturing sector has been caving. I work in the steel industry and I know what it is. When the manufacturing sector goes, a lot of other industries go. And when we made our announcement, Marcel did her announcement about tariff proofing or Trump proofing, she pointed exactly that and how everything that has been, all the cuts that have taken place in education, in our colleges, which are now no longer public, they're private because only 30% get funded, right? That undermines it. So what do we need to do? We need to do two things. We got to start looking at strategies that strengthen our manufacturing sector, but also we got to start paying people what they're due. So minimum wage, and also not freezing people's wages and taking away their rights like Ford did with teachers.
Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
Yeah. We need to somehow figure out how we can get more young people in the trades. And I think that would start with high school and encouraging them to get into the trades. You know, I work with a lot of small businesses and I work with a lot of tradespeople, and they're looking all the time for good workers and they can't find them. You know, and I talk to young people and they just won't work. You know, so I think we need to start in the high schools advocating for the trades, because we need to get people back in the trades. You know, our tradesmen are retiring and we need the youth in there to take over, and I think that would be one big solution.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
It might also be tradeswomen. Part of the solution.
My apologies.
Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Well, I'd look at a living wage region by region in Ontario because it is different all over Ontario. I mean, the costs here in Wellington and Dufferin and Caledon are much higher than they are down in London and Kitchener. So region by region living wage is a good start. What I started in the town of Erin is looking at the gravel pits. Once they're done, they're done. Rehab them, put in on slab, tiny homes, municipal well, municipal septic, owned by the municipality, so there's no profit in these homes, but they're employment homes, just like they have in British Columbia at Whistler, where you have the people who work in the restaurants, the people who have the low-paying hourly job, they have a comfort place to go to. They can afford their car to drive to work, they can afford their insurance, they can afford their food. You're paying less than $700 a month rent in one of those units. What are we paying here now, $1,500 for a one-bedroom, give or take? $2,000. So there's options we can do, but I don't think letting developers and private enterprise have it. I think the municipalities or the government has to own these. It's not something that we have to make a profit on.
Thank you, Michael. I was waiting for this question to finish before I answered it. I know we'll get to the first three over here, and we have another partner question. I'll try to get to you guys. It just depends on how long they take. So our next question, we'll take it from the floor. It will be directed to Chris Egleton to start.
Coming out and allowing us to speak here. If the moderator will indulge me, I'd like to ask two brief questions of the audience. All right. How many people have had an ECG at a hospital or a clinic recently? Put your hands up. Okay. How many people know whether it was done correctly? Any nurses, doctors in the room? Okay. So there seems to be a common thread of the evening that healthcare is a priority for any of the governments. My name is John French. I am a representative on the Ontario Society of Cardiac Technologists. The expression is, if the mountain won't come to John, John must come to the mountain. And apparently the mountain didn't get the memo, and John is here speaking to the representatives that hopefully will continue on with the work that I'm going to talk about. Our society is trying to become standardized in Ontario to make the quality of a very simple test, an electrocardiogram, which identifies issues with the human heart. We presented at Queen's Park in December and identified to some of the different members in attendance that we were willing to show them how to save $43 million a year on that single test alone. If it's not done correctly, subsequent testing down the road is wasted, it's redundant, and in most cases not necessary. It doesn't identify the issues. My question to the sitting panel here is, and it was going to be addressed to the Minister of Health, if elected, will you consider standardizing cardiac technologists in Ontario?
You went to Queen's Park and your affiliation was going to save $42 million a year?
We presented information to the representative friend, Jelena, she's the health critic, to the effect that a simple test, if it's done correctly, once, will save the province potentially $43 million a year. Downstream, the testing that results of the error in the initial test costs more than that.
So if it's an advance in medical technology and it's going to save money, it sounds like...
No, what we're trying to do is standardize the quality of the education and the technicians, technologists that are conducting these tests. At the moment, we fit through the cracks. We're not recognized as a college or a body similar to nurses. Massage therapists even have recognition where we do not.
So yes, I would say if we look into that and...
Thanks, Chris. George, did you want to respond?
I'm not afraid to say I don't know what the answer is, but I can find out. You said you talked to France Jelena, who's a wonderful MPP of ours. Did she give you an answer?
Not directly. We also spoke to Monique Taylor.
Okay, and Monique
I'm from Hamilton. So
and did Did Monique Taylor give you an answer?
She didn't give us a direct answer. She was busy discussing it with friends, Jelena.
Okay.
We have not had a specific yes or no from any individual in the sitting government or any of the other parties.
Okay. All I could say is, in principle, I think it's a great idea, but I also understand our parliamentary system. For me to say I like it, but my party says it doesn't, is wrong, right? Because you live within a parliamentary system. And you make. So I will go back and talk to our leader in our caucus and find out. But personally, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
I mean, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. And this is part of my local approach, is finding the people that know what they're talking about and advocating for issues such as this. So, absolutely.
Start at your headwaters health clinic. There are very knowledgeable people there.
Thank you.
Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
I'm assuming the certification would be like radiologists have a certification and training. So I'm hoping
what we're attempting is to join the CMRIT, which is a College of Medical Radiation Imaging Technologists.
Right. So the same certification radiologists would have.
Basically,
yeah,
yes.
I would totally support that, and I would champion it even if my leader didn't. This is common sense. There's nothing. It's obvious it should be done. It needs to be done, and there's probably a few other tests and pieces of equipment that should fall into this as well. So I think there's some cleanup that has to be done in the medical system, and your suggestion sounds great. Thank you.
Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Efficiency in government, accuracy in medicine. I'm all in. Yeah. But you know, this government is busy trying to dismantle our healthcare system. Ontario spends the least amount of money per capita on healthcare of all provinces in Ontario. I don't understand it. When I was mayor in 2019, the chair of the local health integration network came to see me. He told me that in this area, Central West Lynn, they were spending 50% on healthcare of the rest of the province. We were getting half in our riding. And Ontario spends the least amount of health care of all the provinces. So we're getting jobbed here, folks. Something's wrong. The priorities are not right. Spending money on $2 billion spas down on the lakefront, or spending $3 billion sprinkling it amongst us as a vote-buying gimmick.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah. So.
Thank you. We'll take another question from the floor. And the first crack at it will be from George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP Party.
Hi, it's me again, Peter Bangarth. A year or two before the current government came into power, the previous government had instituted a research study here in Ontario to determine whether a guaranteed income would be a good thing, would work here in Ontario the way it has in other jurisdictions, such as some in Europe. One of the first things the Conservative government did when it came in was to can that research project before it could come to a determination of yes or no. So have you or your party given any consideration to reinstituting such a study so we can find out once and for all whether a guaranteed income is something that would help the province?
George, over to you.
And the answer is an unequivocal yes. As a matter of fact, after it was, I think the pilot was in 2016 or 17, and then literally a very short time after, it was one of the first cuts that Doug Ford and his government made. We actually had met with a number of the administrators and people that were involved in the project and saw that there were really very good, useful benefits from it. They saw the program as very effective. So it would be definitely something that we would go back and look at and build on that experience of that pilot.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
as you've probably figured out by now, I'm all into looking into different things. So, you know, I don't know enough about that specific thing, but absolutely, let's look into anything that can help everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Yeah, and I don't know if Bonnie has made a statement on this yet. I think it's a great idea. I'm always, though, concerned of how we fund things. So as long as we know how to fund it, I'd be totally supportive of it.
Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Yeah, it's a shame that project wasn't taken to its completion, because I think it should be. I think it should be reinstated. Let's see the results of it. There's a lot of arguments for this Housing First, so I would certainly agree. I'm just looking through our policy. I don't see it here, but I'll consult the leader, and we'll have an answer tomorrow night. but I think it should be reinstated, the program, and taken to its conclusion.
One way or the other.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to find out. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party.
You're referring to universal basic income, right?
That's one way of doing it, yes.
Yeah, my party does not support universal basic income.
Thank you, Chris. Take another question from the floor, and if the preambles are short, we should get to most of them, I think.
Short. It's Rob Strang from Orangeville. I just think as we go to vote for a representative for Dufferin Caledon, we should know that whether or not the candidates actually live in Dufferin Caledon. So I'd just like each of the candidates to tell us whether or not they do live in Dufferin Caledon, and if not, why their party didn't make a bigger effort to find somebody from Dufferin Caledon if they're serious about getting a representative for us.
Thank you, Rob. The first person to answer that will be Jeffrey Halsall.
That's too easy. Yeah, born and raised. I born and raised in the same house that I grew up in Caledon Village.
Michael Dehn, the Ontario Liberal Party.
I'm not from Dufferin or Caledon. I was asked to run by the party because they did have a candidate who had a family issue that came up just before the election, and on short notice I was asked to run. Before that I wasn't even a Liberal, but I think I'm a pretty good politician and a decent guy.
Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
I have lived in Dufferin Caledon for 33 years, 32 of them here in Orangeville. I now live in Bellefountain in Caledon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton from the New Blue Party.
Yes, I do. I've lived in Orangeville for just over 40 years.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP.
We live in Mono, a multi-generational family with our youngest daughter, wonderful husband, and 2 grandkids. They were the first ones to move here, and our other daughter, who's here, moved here, and then we decided to follow them, and Kathy and I both agree it's the best decision we've ever made in our lives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Full disclosure, the moderator's from Fergus. And he's staying in Mono tonight because he can't get home. The next question from the floor, first person to get a shot at answering will be Michael Dehn.
As we start to have an aging population where the province is not ready in the hospitals as well as long-term care facilities, what is your plan to not leave a generation behind, or to put the pressure on the generation coming after it to care for their parents?
So I mean, right now, assisted living, long-term care, retirement homes, this continuum of care, there isn't a real push in the private sector to do a lot of new builds. I think there has to be some incentives by the province to encourage people to do these continuum of care builds, where if you want to move into an apartment, then you move into assisted living, then into long-term care. You have your community that you grow old with. The other problem we're having, even with long-term care, you're on a waiting list. You could be a couple. One gets into one home, another one gets into another home 4 hours away, or one lives still on their own and the other's in a long-term care home.
Sorry, so is there a plan?
I don't know if our party has a plan. Sorry, you just asked the question off this. I'm just giving you my answers. Both of my parents recently passed away, but they went through the long-term care system in Wellington Dufferin Public Health. So I'm familiar with it, and there's just not enough spaces.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Yes, we definitely need to invest in-home care so that we can age gracefully where we live, if possible, accessibility modifications and such. We also need to invest in long-term care, and I can tell you I was involved as the mayor in reducing development charges for long-term care here in Orangeville. We now have a new long-term care build happening here. We need more long-term care for sure, and I think some of the new models that are coming out are fantastic. There's memory wings and such. You know, the population is aging, and we're not spending enough energy on this, and definitely the government needs to spend more money, and certainly the Green Party of Ontario wants to spend more money on our seniors.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton.
I agree. We have to take care of our seniors. They looked after us and they provided everything the generation before. We do need to invest more in healthcare to be able to get more PSWs, to be able to look after the people that want to stay in their homes. And we need to invest more in long-term care. And same as the group homes, I deal with a lot of long-term care homes with my current job. So I'm in them in a bunch of different ones around the GTA all the time. And they're great facilities. They're really expensive, but they're great facilities. And we need to invest in more of them to help out our seniors.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas, over to you.
My wife and I took care of my palliative mother for 8 years, but 3 years palliative at home. And I was really excited when our MPP, Wayne Gates, introduced a bill to get a home care support credit, which I think is critical because I think more and more seniors would like to live in their homes. But we have to start building more houses too. Part of our New Homes Ontario, New Homes Ontario plan is directed at long-term care homes because private home long-term care homes have not had a very good record, and we saw that during the pandemic. So we need to find alternatives there, especially since they've been shutting down so quickly. So building nonprofit municipal types long-term care homes, I think, have become very critical. And we got to definitely stop licensing private long-term care supplies that have had terrible records. And finally, we need to stop the forced relocation of patients away from their families that this Ford government introduced.
Jeffrey Halsall.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of figuring out the long-term care issue, and I think a big part of that, which I think is part of what you were asking, is advocating for reminding people that they need to take care of their parents as they age. And, maybe we can start that in the education system and perhaps there should be a somewhat of a course in high school on taking care of your elders. Because I see it that, people don't want to take care of their aging parents. And that's a shame, and that's something that we need to advocate for, and I'm all in favor of figuring that out.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm sorry, we only have time for one more question.
Okay. Hi, here, Ryan Barnes here. If elected, what is your individual party's plans to deal with Donald Trump's tariffs?
Sorry, Sandy, you have the first chance to answer that one.
Well, I think we have to, again, I don't have the exact GPO response at this moment, but I do believe that we need to respond like for like and be strong and work as Team Canada is both the federal and provincial governments collectively have to fight Mr. Trump, obviously, on these tariffs. So I'm certainly for putting these tariffs in place, and I know I've heard Mike Schreiner talk about this, that we need to have multi-party discussions with the other leaders and have a collective response to Mr. Trump. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Chris Egleton.
So when Trump threatens things like tariffs, he does it all the time. He threatens, and he does it for various reasons. He does it to get what he wants, to make a deal, or even just to keep people focused on something else while he's doing something else. So I wouldn't even say that the threat of the tariff is going to have, well, first of all, he wants our border fixed. He said that from the beginning, which I don't know why we had to wait for him to fix our borders. But we need to fix our borders, and then the threat should be gone. But that's what he's using for, is just to threaten us. I think it's a good opportunity for us to work with our countries and our other provinces. We need to start taking away the border problems we have with inter-province trading, and let's start dealing with us. We need to build relationships with other countries to not rely on the U.S. We rely way too heavily on just the U.S. That's never a good business plan for anybody.
Thank you, Chris. George Nikitas.
Actually, the second day of the campaign, Mart Stiles introduced a very comprehensive program called Tariff Proofing Canada. I call it the Trump Proofing Canada because it's going to be around for 4 years. I can give you a copy of it. It's very 4 key elements: a strong, united, and coordinated retaliation, buy Canadian strategy, and look at broader international partners rather than the United States, strong targeted support to all the industries that are going to be affected, and strong income and training support to workers that will be affected. And on the last one, I would say very, very important, we need the type of income support, not like during the pandemic when Doug Ford, who was best friends to Donald Trump, I guess, 100%, he said, cut teachers' wages, education workers, cut healthcare workers, called PSW, froze all their wages. That's not the type of support we need.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall.
Yeah, something I've said for years is we need to put Canada first and support our own, and we have, I think, enough resources in Canada to be able to sustain ourselves. And I'm glad that now people are waking up to that because of this. And I'm a big advocate for keeping things local, keeping things Canadian. And I think it starts with every one of us remembering, before you go to buy something on Amazon, look in your community at where you can buy what you need. And often you'll find it cheaper anyways, and you'll have the better customer service. So it can start with every one of us, shopping local, shopping Canadian.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dehn, over to you.
Yeah, I would promote more local provincial food processing, set up more processing locally, stop sending our livestock across the border and have it come back in pieces to us. That doesn't help anyone in Canada. Remove interprovincial trade barriers for products, but also for professionals, because there's certain trades that can't go from one province to the other. You have to register with another one. Geoscientists is one of them that I'm familiar with. And financial support for workers affected by tariffs. This is going to hit the automotive sector if it comes in. Softwood lumber industry's already got a 14% tariff. You're going to add another 25. That makes it 39%. So, there's got to be food first, remove the trade barriers, and then financial support.
Thank you, Michael. And Laura, I'm so sorry we didn't get to your question. We didn't get to our DBOT partner question either, but, join us in Shelburne on Thursday and ask away. And I will give the hockey scores out Thursday if anybody wants to go up there. So we're down to our 2-minute closings now, and those will start. We're going to keep with our order, so Chris Egleton, you get to go first.
Well, thank you all for coming out. like I said before, I decided to run because I was fed up of the way our government system was working federally, provincially. I don't think they're working for us anymore. Life's too hard for everyday Canadians right now. I think I've noticed common sense disappeared from our government along the way, and I just want to see it come back, and I want to fight for Dufferin Caledon and just bringing a common sense government back. I want to lower taxes for everybody. I want life more affordable again. I want people to be able to provide it for their families again. I want to get the government out of your life. The government do government stuff and keep their job, and let you live your life and do your job. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now hear from George Nikitas from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you. I would like to thank the sponsors again of this very important night. Thank our candidates. Thank you for all your great questions. I hope I've been able to leave you with a better idea of who I am and to tell you why I would be very honored to be your next member of Provincial Parliament. I want to commit to you, unlike your current member of Provincial Parliament, that I will be there at all times to work with you to build a new Ontario. And what do I mean by a new Ontario? Where everyone has a family doctor. No one has to wait hours at Headwaters or at Peel Memorial, in emergency rooms. Or most important, we haven't talked about this tonight, doesn't have to use their credit card to pay for health care. Where everyone has a place they can afford to call home, where our children, our parents get the support they need, where we recognize the importance of our precious farmland and green belts, and maybe even where we put food banks in the rearview mirror. I will be there when you need help with any problem or when you have ideas that you want to share with me. I will make a commitment to you, and I will not only be available by phone or in my office, but I pledge to hold a town hall meeting every month, Orangeville, Shelburne, Caledon, Bolton, Southfields, whatever communities want, to stay in touch and to get your ideas and to give you feedback of what your concerns are being dealt with at Queen's Park. But I want to leave you with the most important message. Last election saw the lowest turnout in the history of our province. That's not only a shame, but it's a threat to our democracy. So I hope tonight that you go out and you talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors, anybody, and just tell them get out to vote. I don't care if you vote for these other people. Just get out and vote, and let's bring back democracy to Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
Thank you. Well, tonight you've heard a lot of promises. Not as many as you would have heard because 2 people are missing. But I want to leave you with something real. I'm not a politician. I'm not here to represent a party. I'm here because this is my home. Because I've spent my entire life serving this community, not just when it's election season, but every single day. Dufferin Caledon needs an MPP who truly understands what's at stake, someone who has lived the struggles of small business owners, who knows firsthand what families are going through, and who isn't tied to party politics. That's why I'm running, and that's why I'm running as an independent, because I answer to you, not to party insiders, because I believe in the local approach, putting this community first, fighting for real solutions, and making sure that government works for you and not the other way around. So on February 27th, you have a choice. More of the same, more empty promises, more party politics, or real change. A candidate who will show up, who will listen and fight and work for you every single day, just as I always have. So I'm Jeffrey Halsall. I'm ready to be your local boots-on-the-ground MPP, and I'm asking for your support so we can take the local approach to Queen's Park together. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for the discussion we've had. This has been wonderful, and I look forward to the town halls. And I look forward to every one of you being at these town halls. And for the next debate, I know there's a snowstorm, but let's get this place full. You know, if it's the summer, this place should be full. And that's how we'll get more people out to vote, by telling them, hey, come on, you know, let's go and fill up this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Just so you know where we're going on Thursday night, we're up in Shelburne, so if you come here, it'll be pretty empty. Now we'll hear a closing from Michael Dehn from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Well, I'm prepared to go to Queen's Park. I'm prepared to have an office in the community. I'm prepared to not be absent. I see public transit has become a big issue in Bolton, not so much here in Orangeville, but since the 1990s, how many railways have been sold off and are no longer an option for public transit? We have to come back and think about this. If you go to Europe, how do you get around? Public transit's all trains or light rail. And getting rid of more railway tracks is not doing anyone any benefit as we grow. If we remove speculators from the real estate market and make them build it or they go bye-bye, we've got a chance, because if you look at what the cost is on the homes, it's not necessarily the building, it's the real estate. A two-acre lot in the country here is $600,000 without a well, without septic. What does a new house in town cost? I see them here, $500,000 for a townhouse. You go in some other communities, $1 million for a little townhouse. It's not affordable. It's not the building that's costing the money, it's the land underneath it. I'd also like to leave you with a little something I presented last week at Council. I'd like to take a moment just to encourage everyone to shop locally and buy Canadian, especially in this time of uncertainty with U.S. tariffs. Supporting local and Canadian businesses is important, as many are still recovering from losses during COVID. We don't know if, when, or how long Canadians might be affected by these tariffs, but united, maybe we can reduce the impact to our local community and all Canadians across our great country. I'm Michael Dehn, and I'm Canadian.
Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario, your closing remarks.
Thank you. Again, thank you everybody for coming. As we wrap up tonight, I want to leave you with 3 simple truths. First, leadership matters. For 30 years, I've shown up for you, not just during the elections, but in the hard daily work of building a better community. As your mayor, I delivered results without political games. As your MPP, I'll bring that same relentless focus to Queen's Park, because you deserve someone who fights for your priorities, not party lines. Second, being in opposition is an important part of democracy. In fact, a strong opposition is democracy's greatest safeguard. It's about holding power accountable while pushing for better solutions. The Ford government has ignored small towns in rural Ontario for too long, and Sylvia Jones has been missing in action in Dufferin Caledon. This is not the type of leadership you deserve and demand. In her refusal to meet with constituents, fighting to protect the Greenbelt, even as the RCMP launched investigations into the government's shady land deals. Third, this election is about you. It's about the parent working 2 jobs to afford rent, the senior waiting years for knee surgery, the young family dreaming of a home near the trails they grew up on. I'm running because I believe in Dufferin Caledon, where health care isn't a luxury, housing isn't a crisis, and your government finally listens. At the advanced polls and on February 27th, you hold the power to make that happen. I live here, I work here, and I volunteer here. I chose this community because it's special. Let's keep it that way, not by clinging to the past, by building a future where no one gets left behind. For accountability, for action, for all of us, please vote Sandy Brown. Thank you, and let's make history together. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Sandy. I want to thank all our candidates who made it out tonight. Thank you so much. Without you, we wouldn't be here either, so great job. I want to thank all of you, every single one of you that came out on the snowy night, especially the hecklers. With distance and light, I can't see who you are, so come out to Shelburne on Thursday and sit right down front, and then we can have more back and forth. I want everyone to get out and vote. That's been mentioned a few times. It upsets me how the vote just keeps dropping. I bring my kids to the polls every single election, and I make them, and I tell them, when you get that chance, and 2 for one of them today, in 3 years, you got to be out there doing it. So get out and vote. And I hope you appreciate, this is the first time since before COVID we tried doing this live, and it's a lot more fun for me. I hope you appreciated it. I think we get better feedback rather than the canned questions that we get in doing it inside. So thanks to all our partner organizations, the Food Bank, the Dufferin Board of Trade, the DFA, and who am I forgetting? The Home Builders Association. Thank you. And thank you to Rogers for taping this for it. You can watch it over and over and over again all you want. Have a great night. Drive safe.
This is a perfectly healthy child. What's unhealthy are birth alerts, a racist practice that may stop this Indigenous mother from going home with her newborn. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.